For years, the Galactic Council held meetings that shaped the destiny of hundreds of worlds. Each planet sent representatives, leaders, scientists, and diplomats to discuss trade, peace, and technology. Every corner of the galaxy had a voice. Every world except Earth. At first, no one thought much of it. Earth was still considered new to the galactic stage. It had joined the interstellar network only a few decades earlier, after making contact with its first neighboring species. The Council assumed humans were still adjusting, too busy learning, too small to matter. But as the years went by and invitations were sent again and again with no reply, curiosity turned to confusion. Why wasn't Earth showing up? Some said it was arrogance. Others whispered that humans didn't trust the rest of the galaxy. A few believed Earth was simply overwhelmed by advanced civilizations and didn't know how to participate. No one knew for sure, and that made people uneasy. Because in the galaxy, silence was rarely innocent. Across hundreds of star systems, stories about Earth began to spread. Some said humans thought they were superior. Others claimed they were too emotional to work with other species. The gossip reached the halls of the Galactic Council itself, where every meeting began to include a familiar line. Any word from Earth? And every time the answer was the same: none. At first, the Council sent friendly reminders, messages full of warm greetings, diplomatic respect, and offers to help Earth prepare for interplanetary cooperation. But no response ever came. Then came formal requests. Still silence. Finally, the messages turned into warnings. Your absence is being noticed, one said. Participation is essential for peace, said another. But Earth never replied. Some members began to laugh at the idea of humans. They said Earth was just a stubborn little world pretending to be mysterious. They mocked the planet's isolation. To them, it was a primitive place filled with people still fighting over their own borders, too busy arguing to look beyond their skies. And yet, there were a few who didn't laugh. Certain species had observed Earth closely over the years. They'd seen how fast humans adapted, how quickly they turned small discoveries into powerful tools. They'd witnessed humanity's history, its wars, its resilience, its creativity, and knew that something about this silence felt deliberate. One alien ambassador once said, "When a world like Earth goes quiet, it's not because they have nothing to say. It's because they're preparing something worth hearing." No one listened to that warning. Back on Earth, life appeared normal. Cities glowed through the night, industries thrived, and the world's people went about their daily lives. But beneath that calm surface, something much larger was unfolding. Governments and scientists worked together in secrecy, creating alliances that no outsider knew about. The planet's resources were being redirected, not for war, but for preparation. Space stations that once studied stars began testing advanced drives. Shipyards expanded, quietly building in remote orbits hidden from foreign scanners. And every launch that left Earth's atmosphere was disguised as a research mission. The truth was far more ambitious. The human race wasn't ignoring the galaxy, they were studying it, piece by piece. Every intercepted broadcast, every piece of shared data from alien communication networks was analyzed and stored. Earth was learning how the galaxy worked, not by sitting in meetings, but by watching from a distance. While the Council debated peace treaties, humans debated how to survive in a galaxy that didn't trust them. There was a time when humans wanted to be part of the Council. They dreamed of joining the great alliance of worlds. But as they learned more about how the Council operated, doubts began to grow. Some of the most powerful species used peace as a mask for control. They offered smaller worlds protection in exchange for obedience. The moment a planet refused, sanctions followed, trade blocked, routes cut off, and technology withheld. Earth saw the pattern, and they didn't like it. The humans had spent centuries struggling for independence on their own planet. They had fought for freedom, unity, and the right to decide their own fate. So when they realized that joining the Council might mean giving up some of that freedom, they stepped back, not out of pride, but out of caution. And that's why Earth never showed up. While the galaxy thought humans were being arrogant, Earth was quietly making a different choice: to stay free, to stay unbound, and to understand the stars before trusting them. It wasn't an easy decision. Many on Earth disagreed. Some argued that isolation was dangerous, that humanity needed allies. Others believed that if Earth rushed in too soon, It would end up serving the interests of those who saw humans as tools, not equals. So they waited. And they watched. Meanwhile, in the council, tension grew. Every year, new representatives complained about Earth's absence. Some called it disrespectful. Others suggested punishing Earth for its silence. But there were no clear rules for dealing with a planet that simply refused to engage. One meeting ended with a frustrated diplomat saying, "If Earth won't come to the table, maybe we should remind them who holds the power." The others nodded in agreement. Still, there were no signs from Earth. No ambassadors, no ships, no answers. The planet just stayed quiet as if it had vanished from the galactic stage. Yet in the deep darkness beyond Earth's orbit, something was taking shape. Something massive, invisible to most sensors. The truth was that Earth wasn't hiding. It was preparing. Human engineers worked on technologies that even the Council had never approved. They had studied alien energy systems, propulsion drives, and weapon theories. Not to conquer, but to ensure survival. They knew that if the day came when the galaxy decided to remind Earth who held the power, they needed to be ready. Decades passed. To the galaxy, Earth's absence became almost a joke. When a new world joined the Council, older members would tease them. "At least you showed up, unlike Earth." The laughter echoed through the chamber, but no one was laughing on Earth. Inside underground facilities and orbital platforms, humans pushed their limits. Artificial intelligence systems designed for defense, not domination. Shields that could withstand radiation storms. Engines capable of crossing light years in weeks. Quietly, Earth had caught up with the galaxy, then started to surpass it. The Council still thought humans were asleep. They couldn't have been more wrong. One quiet evening on the edge of the Milky Way, a group of alien traders passing near Earth's system picked up strange energy readings. They assumed it was another experiment, perhaps a new communications array or a weather satellite. But when they tried to approach, their sensors jammed completely. No data, no images, nothing. It was as if Earth had wrapped itself in a cloak of shadows. The traders left quickly, unnerved. Their report reached the Council a few months later. Most dismissed it, saying humans were just playing with outdated stealth tech. After all, how dangerous could a single planet be in a galaxy of thousands? The Council had no idea that those outdated experiments were part of something much larger, something that would soon shake the entire galaxy. The silence that had once been mocked was about to speak louder than any Council decree. Back on Earth, in the quiet command centers that dotted the planet's surface, lights blinked in synchronized rhythm. Plans were reaching completion. The first of many orbital structures had been assembled, though none outside the solar system knew what they were for. Some thought they were scientific outposts. Others believed they were defensive satellites. Only a few humans knew the truth. They were the guardians of a secret project, one that had been decades in the making, a project designed not to start a war but to end the need for one. A symbol of Earth's unity and quiet strength. They didn't call it a weapon. They called it a message, because when Earth finally chose to speak, it wouldn't use words, it would use presence. And that presence would make the galaxy realize what humanity's silence had truly meant. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't fear. It was patience. It was focus. Earth had never missed the meetings out of weakness. They had missed them because they were preparing for the day when showing up would no longer be a request, but a declaration. And that day was getting closer. In the quiet darkness beyond Earth's atmosphere, something new had begun to move. It wasn't loud. It didn't flash lights or send out grand signals. It simply existed, quiet, steady, and hidden. At first, no one in the galaxy noticed. Earth's orbit looked peaceful, filled with the usual satellites, research stations, and civilian outposts. But if someone had looked closely, really closely, they might have seen the truth. Something big was happening above that blue planet. The first signs appeared around the moon. Strange metal structures began to appear on its far side, out of sight from most alien sensors. They were built slowly, carefully, and always under heavy encryption. Anyone who tried to scan the area would get nothing but static. At first, it looked like Earth was expanding its space program, maybe testing new mining stations or observatories. But these structures weren't meant for research. They were shipyards, massive ones. From the ground, ordinary people could sometimes see faint trails crossing the sky at night, tiny flashes that vanished in seconds. They didn't know what they were looking at, Maybe a satellite, maybe a meteor. But high above, inside those secret orbital platforms, something extraordinary was taking shape. Humanity was building fleets. Not small patrols or cargo haulers, but full-scale interstellar vessels, ships designed for deep space endurance, defense, and exploration. Every nation on Earth had contributed to their creation. Engineers, scientists, and builders worked side by side without any flag, without rivalry. The secrecy wasn't about fear, it was about unity. The project was bigger than any single government. It belonged to humanity itself. And while the council across the galaxy debated politics, humans were making history. Every new design pushed limits. Old materials were replaced with alloys that could survive extreme conditions. Artificial intelligence systems monitored construction with precision beyond human ability. Solar stations around Venus collected energy to power the process, and each time one ship was completed, another began. Soon there were dozens, then hundreds. Still, the galaxy remained blind to it all. That was partly because humans had learned from watching others. They had studied how alien sensors worked, how they scanned, how they measured, how they tracked heat. Earth developed countermeasures for all of it. To most scanners, the shipyards looked like harmless rocks or old research equipment. The Council had no reason to look deeper. They believed Earth was too far behind to attempt something on this scale. But there were a few alien species who didn't believe the rumors. They had been keeping quiet, observing Earth from a distance. These watchers weren't enemies, they were simply curious. They noticed strange things. Sometimes, they'd detect faint energy pulses coming from behind the moon, strong enough to suggest a massive power source. Other times, they picked up distortion fields that scrambled their readings. It was as if something didn't want to be seen. One small scout ship decided to move closer, hoping to take a look. It never found anything. The moment it approached Earth's orbit, its instruments stopped working. Its cameras turned white. Its engines reset automatically as if they'd been remotely triggered. Terrified, the pilot turned back and left. When the ship returned home, the crew reported that Earth's defense grid had evolved far beyond what anyone expected. But the Council refused to believe them. They said humans are clever, but they can't hide that much. It's impossible, so the warnings were ignored again. Down on Earth, though, the people building these new fleets didn't talk about power or domination. To them, it was about survival and pride. They remembered history, the centuries of struggle, the wars, the rebuilding, the endless attempts to stand tall. Humanity had made mistakes, yes, but it had always learned. This was their chance to prove that they could rise without bowing to anyone. Inside the hidden command centers, screens showed the progress of each project. Dozens of ships were lined up for testing, while others were still in their early stages. Every day, more workers joined the effort. Some had left their homes and families behind, living in quiet isolation on the dark side of the moon, building something they couldn't even talk about. They didn't need fame. They didn't need credit. They knew what they were doing mattered. There was a moment, one quiet day, when the first completed vessel left the construction dock. It moved gracefully into open space, its hull gleaming in the sunlight. The people watching from control stations didn't cheer. They just stood there, silent and proud. They knew this was only the beginning. The ship didn't have a name. Just a serial code and a purpose: to defend and to represent the strength of Earth. Weeks later, more ships followed. To keep the secret, every launch was disguised as a scientific transport. Even the Council's network listed them that way. Whenever alien observers questioned it, Earth replied with polite, short answers. Orbital testing. Nothing unusual. But behind those calm words, the truth was staggering. By then, hundreds of human-built vessels were quietly orbiting near the Moon and Mars. They were equipped with technology that few outside Earth understood: energy shields, fusion drives, self-repair systems. The designs weren't copied from alien tech. They were human creations built from understanding and imagination. Every piece of alien data that had ever reached Earth had been studied and improved upon. Where the galaxy relied on old traditions and strict rules, humans relied on flexibility and experimentation. They didn't follow the same paths. They created their own, and slowly, that difference began to show. Even though no one outside the solar system could see the fleet, its presence had already begun to change things. Earth's atmosphere was calmer, its satellites more coordinated. The planet's technology advanced faster than ever. The people, even without knowing the full truth, felt a strange sense of pride, as if something important was happening above them, something that would one day define their place among the stars. Far away, in the outer edges of the system, a few alien patrol ships passed by. They picked up faint signals, short bursts of light or strange magnetic waves, but could never locate their source. Some called it interference, others called it Earth's ghost signature. Whispers began spreading again through the galactic channels. What is Earth doing up there? Are they hiding something? Why do our scans always fail near their planet? But once again, no one had proof. So the Council continued with its regular meetings, still debating trade routes and alliances, while Earth quietly worked in the shadows. The galaxy didn't know it yet, but every second that passed brought humanity closer to unveiling its true power. There were moments of doubt on Earth, too. Some leaders feared the project might cause fear instead of respect. Others wondered if building such a massive fleet would make humans look like a threat. But the answer always came back the same. We build not to threaten, but to ensure no one ever threatens us. In the vastness of space, that belief became the guiding force of the project. Years went by. The fleets multiplied. The systems became stronger. A defense network surrounded the planet like an invisible shield. Yet through it all, Earth remained silent. No announcements, no declarations, just quiet strength. Then one night, something unusual happened. A passing alien survey ship tried to map the solar system for routine navigation data. When it passed near Mars, its computers began to malfunction. Instead of recording the usual planetary data, the system detected thousands of tiny signals. Each one pulsed for a split second and vanished. It was like a heartbeat, a signal pattern that repeated across the orbit. The crew couldn't understand it. They tried to record it again, but the moment they focused their scanners, the signals disappeared completely. When they reported this strange event, the Council dismissed it again. They said it was an error, maybe a solar flare or interference from human satellites, but the Watchers knew better. Something was alive in that orbit. Something vast, coordinated, and aware of who was watching. Earth wasn't just protecting itself anymore. It was observing back. The galaxy might not have realized it, but the humans were already far beyond simple defense. They had learned how to track every signal entering their system. Every ship, every scan, every whisper in the dark, they saw it all. For now, they stayed hidden. But when the time came, the entire galaxy would finally understand why Earth had been so quiet all these years. Because silence can hide strength, and strength, when revealed, doesn't need to shout. The Watchers above Earth continued their silent work, building, testing, and waiting. Each passing day brought them closer to the moment when the stars themselves would see the truth, that the small blue planet they had ignored was no longer small, no longer helpless, and no longer in the shadows. It was watching. It was ready, and soon it would rise. For years, the Galactic Council had tried to stay patient with Earth. They had waited, sent invitations, offered help, and even made friendly warnings. But no matter how many times they reached out, Earth stayed silent. To the Council, it felt like disrespect. Every other world in the galaxy followed the same rules. Everyone attended the yearly meetings, shared updates, and kept peace through cooperation. But Earth, this small blue world, kept ignoring the calls as if it lived in a different universe. Some members of the Council started to take it personally. They called Earth selfish, ungrateful, and arrogant. They believed humans didn't care about peace. But deep down there was something else mixed with their anger, fear, because no one really knew what Earth was doing. The few ships that had tried to observe the planet closely always came back with broken sensors or corrupted data, and whenever the Council tried to send official drones near Earth's orbit, the drones either lost contact or suddenly powered down. Something in that solar system didn't want to be watched, and that's what scared them. At one meeting, tension filled the Council chamber. Holographic images of hundreds of alien leaders glowed across the circular room. Voices overlapped as different worlds argued about what to do. Some said to ignore Earth. It was a problem that would solve itself. Others demanded action. One voice spoke louder than the rest, echoing through the hall. If they won't join us, maybe it's time to remind them who governs the galaxy. Those words carried weight. They were followed by silence. The kind of silence that means everyone is thinking the same thing but too afraid to say it. Was it time to teach Earth a lesson? In the end, the Council agreed on something less direct. They decided to send a final message, a warning disguised as a diplomatic request. It would sound polite, but the meaning would be clear. Join us, or face consequences. When the message was transmitted toward the solar system, many expected no answer. Others thought humans would finally give in, maybe even send a delegate to calm things down. But what happened next became one of the most talked about moments in galactic history. Earth replied. It was the first transmission from humanity in decades. The voice that came through wasn't angry, loud, or dramatic. It was calm, steady, and clear. It spoke only one short message. We have been patient. We have been quiet. But do not mistake silence for weakness. Then the signal ended. For several minutes, the council chamber was completely still. No one spoke. No one even breathed. The translation systems repeated the sentence again, as if to make sure everyone heard it correctly. Silence for weakness. Those 3 words struck deep. The council didn't know how to respond. Some members laughed, calling it typical human pride. Others felt a chill, sensing something more behind that voice. A quiet confidence that didn't fit the image of a primitive world. One representative leaned forward and said, "It sounds like a threat," another replied, "or a warning." But once again, the majority chose to ignore it. They decided it was just an emotional outburst, a message meant to sound brave but empty of real power. What could Earth possibly do against the galaxy? The council moved on with its usual business. They filed the message into the archives and scheduled the next session. To them, it was over. Earth had simply proven it was too proud to cooperate. But while they were busy with speeches and political games, strange things began happening across the outer regions of the galaxy. Ships reported detecting new energy bursts, brief, powerful signals that appeared and vanished in seconds. Space stations near trade routes recorded static interference unlike anything they'd seen before. Some even claimed to see faint shapes moving through deep space, metal shadows that appeared for only a moment before disappearing completely. At first, no one connected these events to Earth. The galaxy was full of mysteries, unstable stars, strange anomalies, and unexplored regions. It was easy to dismiss. But for those who had been watching Earth carefully, the timing was suspicious. It had all started after that message. Back on Earth, humanity remained completely silent. No more transmissions, no responses, not even a sign of movement. The planet looked peaceful, calm, and ordinary. But if you looked closer, deep into the black sky above it, things were changing. Inside the secret orbital zones, hundreds of ships had finished construction. The great shipyards that once looked like metal skeletons were now alive with activity. Engines glowed softly as they powered up for the first time. Each ship bore the insignia of Earth, a simple emblem, a blue circle with a single white line across it. It wasn't a flag of war, but of unity. Every vessel represented every nation, every culture, every person who had contributed to the project. Humanity had come together in a way the galaxy never thought possible. The ships didn't leave orbit. They stayed hidden, synchronized, and ready. To the outside world, nothing seemed unusual. But for those inside the command centers, everything was about to change. For years, humans had listened to the Council talk about peace while forcing planets into obedience. They had seen how smaller worlds were bullied with trade restrictions and technology bans. And now, the same treatment was being threatened against them. Humanity had made its decision long ago. They would not kneel. When Earth sent that final warning, it wasn't just a message, it was a line drawn across the stars. The humans didn't want war. They didn't want conflict. They simply wanted to live free, to make their own choices without being told how to act or think. But freedom, they knew, had to be protected. That's why the fleets were built. Not for domination, but for defense. Not for conquest, but to make sure no one could ever again call them weak. In the months that followed, alien spies and traders who passed near Earth noticed strange things. One reported seeing reflections on the dark side of the moon, like massive mirrors turning slowly in orbit. Another claimed to have felt a magnetic pulse strong enough to disrupt his ship's systems even at a safe distance. The Council dismissed all these reports as exaggerations. They called them stories made to attract attention. But one scientist from a distant star system looked deeper into the data. She analyzed the readings and realized something terrifying. The energy levels matched those of a massive fleet. She presented her findings to the council, but they ignored her. They said it was impossible. Earth couldn't have built such power without anyone noticing. The very idea was absurd, yet somewhere far away, in a small observation post near the solar border, a group of alien monitors watched in disbelief as new signals began to appear around Earth, steady, organized, and strong. They didn't know what they were looking at, but they felt one thing clearly. Humanity was no longer silent. Back on Earth, people carried on with their lives, unaware of how close they were to changing the galaxy's balance forever. To them it was just another day. Children went to school. Factories hummed. Cities shone under artificial lights. But above them, thousands of unseen guardians waited in the darkness. Each ship was connected to Earth's Central Command, waiting for the signal that would reveal their existence. That moment hadn't come yet, but it would, and when it did, the galaxy would finally understand what Earth had been doing all these years. They would realize that silence can be the loudest sound of all. The Council's warning had been sent, but it had come too late. The humans had already made their choice, and nothing could turn them back. The galaxy had looked down on Earth for too long, calling it small, naive, and emotional. But those emotions, hope, courage, defiance, were exactly what made humans different. As the Council met again months later, the topic of Earth returned. This time the tone was more serious. Some reports suggested that human activity in space had increased. Others said they'd seen signs of a coordinated defense system. The debate grew heated again, but before anyone could agree on what to do, one of the Council's senior members sighed and said, "Maybe we should have listened when they warned us." No one replied. Far across the stars, Earth rotated quietly, covered in blue oceans and white clouds, its night side dotted with lights of life and cities. And beyond that beautiful planet in the black sea of space, silent warships glided through the dark, unseen by any eye but their own. The galaxy had ignored the warning, but the humans never repeated themselves. They didn't need to, because the next time Earth spoke, it wouldn't be through words at all. It would be through the thunder of revelation that would shake the galaxy awake. And when that day came, everyone would remember the message that had been dismissed as arrogance. Do not mistake silence for weakness. It had been a warning, not a threat. And soon the galaxy would learn exactly what it meant. For months after Earth's last warning, the galaxy went back to its routine. Trade routes stayed open, meetings continued, and most of the Council members acted like nothing had happened. They believed Earth was just trying to look strong. To them, humans were still the same, too emotional, too unpredictable, and far too small to matter. But something was about to happen that would change that belief forever. It started on a quiet night. Across dozens of alien worlds, astronomers and navigators noticed something strange. Their long-range sensors picked up a sudden burst of energy from Earth's direction. It wasn't large enough to be an explosion, but it wasn't normal either. It was sharp, focused, and timed. Some thought it was a natural event, a solar flare maybe. Others dismissed it as a glitch in their systems, but then the energy reading started multiplying. Within minutes, new signals appeared one after another, each coming from a slightly different point around the same world, Earth. It was as if something massive had just switched on in orbit. At first, no one understood what they were seeing. The readings were too organized, too clean. They formed a perfect pattern around the planet, evenly spaced, moving in perfect synchronization. The pattern grew, covering the entire system like a ring of light. And then, for the first time in galactic history, the entire Milky Way turned its eyes toward Earth. The Galactic Council was flooded with reports. Communication lines filled with chatter, confusion, and disbelief. Every sensor, every radar, every telescope in the nearby sectors was detecting the same thing, an enormous fleet surrounding the blue planet. 1,000 ships, maybe more, each one large enough to be seen from orbit, each one carrying the unmistakable mark of human design. Their engines glowed softly, their hulls smooth and silent, built with purpose and precision. It wasn't chaos. It wasn't panic. It was control. Earth had revealed its power. For the first few hours, the galaxy just stared. Worlds that once mocked Earth fell silent. The Council gathered in emergency session. Leaders argued, Voices clashed and fear began to rise. They wanted answers. How had humans built this? How had they done it without being noticed? And why now? No one could explain it. All they knew was that the quiet world that never attended a single meeting had suddenly shown the galaxy something no one expected, a level of power that rivaled even the greatest empires from their stations. Observers described the scene as beautiful and terrifying. The ships didn't move aggressively. They didn't point weapons or transmit threats. They just held position, forming a massive formation around their home world, their hulls reflecting sunlight in waves that shimmered like fire across the darkness of space. It was as if Earth was surrounded by a crown made of steel and light. Every human on the planet could see them now. People stepped out of their homes, looked up at the night sky, and saw faint glimmers that hadn't been there before. They didn't know the full truth, but they could feel it. Something huge had changed. Something powerful was watching over them. News spread fast. Cameras pointed to the skies and broadcasts lit up around the world. At last, the secret could no longer be hidden. The governments that had stayed quiet for decades finally spoke. They confirmed what everyone already suspected. Earth had built a defensive fleet, not to conquer, but to protect. And for the first time in history, humanity stood united. Old rivalries faded. Borders and differences didn't matter anymore, because everyone understood one thing clearly. The galaxy was watching. Above them, the 1,000 ships continued to move with grace and precision, their formation shifting slightly as if they were breathing together, each one connected to the others through invisible energy lines, forming a network stronger than anything ever seen before. Meanwhile, far across the stars, panic began to spread. The Council's military branches scrambled their fleets not to attack, but to observe. Every advanced race sent probes to gather data. But every probe that got too close to Earth's orbit either lost contact or was quietly turned away by an invisible force. It wasn't a weapon. It was something far more advanced, a defensive field that distorted signals and blocked unauthorized scans. In one Council outpost, a senior scientist whispered the words no one wanted to say aloud. "They've surpassed us." And in that moment, the galaxy finally realized what had been happening all those years. Earth was silent. They hadn't been ignoring the Council. They hadn't been lazy or arrogant. They had been preparing for this day. The same day the galaxy would see what humans were truly capable of when left alone. While others fought endless wars and wasted time in politics, humans had focused on survival and unity. They had taken everything they learned, every failure, every hardship, every discovery, and turned it into strength. The backward planet had become something new, a fortress of peace. Back on Earth, inside the main command center, the atmosphere was calm. Screens displayed every ship's position, every movement, every pulse of energy. The mission was clear: no aggression, no fear, no threats. Just presence. The people watching those screens didn't celebrate. They didn't smile or cheer. They simply looked on with quiet pride, because this was what humanity had worked for. Not fame, not conquest, security. They knew what the Council was capable of. They had seen other worlds stripped of independence for refusing to obey. They had seen planets made dependent on Council technology, forced into silence. Humanity had refused that path even when it meant isolation, and now the galaxy could see why. The Council's emergency chamber was filled with debate. Some leaders wanted to send envoys to Earth immediately. Others demanded answers. How did a single planet produce so many ships, so much power? But no one had the courage to make threats anymore, because everyone knew one thing. Those ships weren't there by accident. They were a message. For centuries, the galaxy had believed humans were slow, emotional creatures who needed guidance. Now it was clear, humans had never been slow. They had been deliberate. Every step, every choice, every silence was part of a plan. And that plan had just unfolded before everyone's eyes. Back on the planet, the people continued to watch the glowing points in the sky. Some felt proud, others felt emotional, but all of them understood the same thing. Humanity had finally claimed its place among the stars. The message wasn't spoken out loud, but it was clear to every world watching. Earth didn't need approval. It didn't need to attend meetings or seek permission to exist freely. It had earned its place. not through diplomacy but through determination. The night that began with confusion ended with realization. The galaxy had seen what it wanted to see, a show of power, but to humanity it was something else entirely. It was a promise, a silent declaration that no one would ever threaten their home again. For the first time in history, the stars around Earth glowed not with fear, but with respect. And though no weapon was fired, no words exchanged, the entire galaxy understood something that would never be forgotten. Earth had awoken. The quiet planet that had once stayed out of every meeting had finally spoken, not with sound, but with sight. 1,000 warships shining against the dark. It wasn't an attack. It wasn't a declaration of war. It was simply the truth, a truth so clear, so powerful that even the Council couldn't deny it. The universe changed that night. Worlds that once mocked humanity now whispered their name with caution. The Council members who once demanded submission now spoke with respect. And for the first time in countless years, the galaxy realized that peace doesn't always come from words. Sometimes it comes from strength, the kind of strength that doesn't boast, doesn't shout but simply exists. And so, as the night passed and the stars dimmed again, one thought echoed through the minds of countless beings across the galaxy. The humans had never been missing. They had been waiting for the right moment to remind the universe that they were not to be underestimated. And now, that moment had arrived. After the night when Earth's 1,000 ships had appeared in orbit, the galaxy was no longer laughing. Across the stars, every world was paying attention. News channels on distant planets buzzed with reports, sensor logs were shared, and the Council scrambled to understand what had just happened. For decades, Earth had been silent, and now it had made a statement no one could ignore. The Council called an emergency session. It was the largest gathering in centuries. Representatives from hundreds of worlds crowded into the chamber, their holograms flickering in unison. Every voice was anxious, tense, and even a little afraid. There was uncertainty, and behind that an unmistakable sense of awe. No one had expected Earth to reach this level of power. The question on everyone's mind was simple. Why now? Why show such force after decades of silence? Then, as the debate reached its peak, the communication systems of the Council chamber sparked. The screens flickered, and for the first time in decades, a human voice appeared before the galaxy. Not on a small screen, not in a corner. It was a full holographic projection, life-sized, standing tall and steady in the middle of the chamber. The representative did not appear angry, did not shout, and did not issue threats. They were calm, poised, and direct. Every eye in the galaxy focused on them. Every voice fell silent. The human began to speak. We have observed the galaxy for a long time. We have studied your councils, your decisions, your systems of law and order, and we have chosen our own path. We did not arrive here to challenge you, nor to start a war. We arrived to make one thing clear. Earth stands as a sovereign power, independent and capable of defending itself. There was a pause. Even the council members, who had grown used to arrogant species and empty boasts, felt the weight of these words. We missed your meetings because we were preparing, not for conquest, not for aggression, but to ensure that we could survive in a universe that does not always act fairly. We have built what we needed to protect ourselves and to make sure that no other world could dictate our actions. The silence in the chamber was complete. Some representatives shifted nervously. Others leaned closer to their displays, trying to read the subtle cues of the human projection. There was no arrogance in the tone, only confidence, clarity, and calm. We sought cooperation when it was possible. We reached out when it was safe. We listened when the galaxy spoke, and yet our warnings were ignored, our patience underestimated, and our silence misinterpreted. A murmur went through the chamber. Warnings? Silence? Asked one alien diplomat, disbelief written across their expression. Let this be the final message, the human continued. We do not seek war, but we will not bow to intimidation. We are not naive. We are not helpless, and we will not allow ourselves to be treated as lesser beings. Every world in the galaxy listened closely. For the first time, humans had spoken not as a minor world, not as newcomers, but as equals, calm, measured, and unshakable. The human representative extended a hand, as if gesturing toward the fleet that hovered above their planet. Behind them, holographic images displayed the 1,000 ships in orbit. Every hull, every formation, every light pulsating with precision, it was impossible to ignore. We have prepared for centuries. We have united as one planet, as one people, and we have learned to stand together. From this day onward, Earth will no longer be underestimated, and we ask the galaxy to take note. Our silence was not weakness. Our absence was not indifference. Our patience was not ignorance. It was preparation. For a long moment, no one spoke. The chamber was heavy with tension. Then slowly questions began to rise. Representatives asked about their intentions, about their capabilities, and about why they had chosen this moment. The human replied with the same calm voice. We have no intention of conquering others. We have no desire to dominate. Our fleet exists to protect, not to attack. But understand this. If anyone threatens our home, our people, or our freedom, the galaxy will see that we are capable of defending what is ours. The Council had spent centuries debating the value of diplomacy, the cost of war, and the power of alliances. Yet here stood a single human representative delivering a message more potent than any law, any fleet, or any weapon the galaxy had ever seen. It was not an empty threat, it was a promise. Outside the Council chambers, across the vast reaches of space, observers who had once underestimated humanity began to rethink everything. Traders, explorers, and even former critics watched in disbelief. The quiet, emotional species they had mocked for centuries had built an unprecedented fleet, and now they spoke with authority, conviction, and clarity. Inside the chamber, the debate continued, but the tone had changed. Fear replaced arrogance. Respect replaced dismissal. The Council realized that whatever measures they had taken against Earth in the past, warnings, sanctions, dismissals, had been premature. The humans were not asking for recognition. They were demanding something far more fundamental: respect. We understand that some of you may be afraid, the human representative said, and that is understandable. You have watched a world grow silently, unseen, and now it appears powerful. But fear does not change the truth. The truth is that humanity has always been capable of standing on its own. And now we have shown you. It was not an apology. It was not a boast. It was clarity, and that clarity shook the galaxy to its core. Over the next several hours, the Council worked to respond. Messages were sent to their fleets. Observers were recalled. Envoys debated whether to travel to Earth. Each representative understood that the humans had demonstrated both strength and wisdom, the rare combination of power without recklessness. Across the planet, people watched the events unfold through broadcasts. Children stared at the sky in awe. Families gathered, feeling a strange mix of pride and relief. The humans had never sought glory. They had only sought security, unity, and freedom. And now the galaxy could see it too. For the first time, humanity's presence was undeniable. It was not just a planetary force, it was a symbol. A demonstration that even a single species, when united and patient, could command respect among countless others. The human continued to speak, addressing not just the Council but the entire galaxy. Let this be a moment for understanding. We do not seek to dominate, we do not seek to conquer, but we will stand firm. We will protect our home, our people, and our freedom. And we hope that the galaxy will see this as a chance to acknowledge us not as newcomers, not as primitives, but as equals. The holograms behind the humans shifted, showing more details of the fleet, the orbital stations, and the coordination systems. Each image was precise, deliberate, and unmistakable. The audience could see that Earth had not built these defenses overnight. This had been decades of careful planning, meticulous work, and unprecedented cooperation. Even the most skeptical members of the Council were forced to admit that the humans had surpassed expectations. We do not demand immediate trust, the human concluded. We only demand understanding, and let our actions, not our words, show you what patience and unity can accomplish. From this day forward, the galaxy will know that Earth is not to be underestimated. When the projection ended, silence filled the chamber. Not a single voice dared interrupt. The message had landed perfectly, not with threats but with undeniable presence and truth. Outside the chamber, across distant star systems, whispers spread. They've done it. They've united. They're not just a planet, they're a force. For the first time, the galaxy understood that Earth's silence had been deliberate. Every absence, every ignored invitation, every moment of quiet had been part of a plan. And now the plan was revealed. The humans had not spoken to threaten. They had spoken to declare a simple truth: they existed. They were united, and they would not be underestimated again. That night, the 1,000 ships in orbit remained silent, their presence alone sending a message stronger than any weapon or fleet. Humanity had chosen to speak with action, not aggression. And the galaxy finally understood. And for the first time, humans felt what they had been building toward all these decades: recognition, respect, and the knowledge that they were no longer a quiet, overlooked planet, but a force that could not be ignored. After Earth had sent its message and revealed its fleet, the galaxy could no longer ignore the humans. For centuries, other species had dismissed them as small, emotional, and insignificant. But now the galaxy had to face a simple truth: Earth was not what anyone expected. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across distant star systems, alien leaders held emergency meetings. Scientists analyzed the fleet and its systems. Traders recalculated routes, realizing that the humans now controlled a network of orbital systems that could monitor much of the inner solar system. And even those who had once mocked Earth now whispered in awe. For the first time, humans were seen as equals. Not just newcomers or minor players, but a force that could shape the balance of power in the galaxy. The Council, which had once been confident in its authority over smaller worlds, now faced an entirely new reality. Their diplomats were forced to reconsider past judgments. Every previous assumption about human weakness, about ignorance or inexperience, had been proven wrong. The humans had acted quietly, patiently, and deliberately. They had studied the galaxy, prepared, and now revealed their true capabilities at the perfect moment. Some in the Council were cautious. They suggested opening a dialogue, inviting humans to discuss peaceful cooperation. Others were nervous, worried that any misstep could lead to a conflict no one was prepared to handle. Still, all agreed on one thing: humanity could no longer be underestimated. Back on Earth, life continued as it had for decades. Cities thrived, industries worked, and people went about their daily routines. But the planet was not the same. Humans knew they had crossed a threshold. They had sent a message to the galaxy, and the galaxy had finally listened. For ordinary people, the presence of the fleet in orbit was awe-inspiring. Children looked up at the night sky and saw the lights of ships moving silently against the stars. Families gathered to watch broadcasts showing the formations, the coordinated patrols, and the massive scale of the effort. Unlike the galaxy's fear-filled whispers, humans themselves felt pride, not arrogance, but a quiet sense of accomplishment. They had done what they had set out to do. The galaxy, however, was struggling to comprehend it. For centuries, civilizations had relied on politics, alliances, and intimidation to maintain control. Then came the humans, who had taken a different path. They had not sought power through fear or manipulation. They had not joined wars or forced others to obey. They had built their strength quietly, patiently, and for a single purpose: survival and freedom. And that difference was what made the galaxy pause. Trade routes that once ignored Earth now included it in calculations. Explorers and navigators who once mocked the planet studied it with care. Even rival empires began to reconsider how they had treated smaller or independent worlds. The humans' actions had set a precedent, a demonstration that patience, unity, and preparation could outweigh centuries of traditional power. Reports came from alien observers stationed near Earth's system. They noted that the fleet continued to operate with calm precision. No weapons fired, no signals of aggression. Every movement was measured, deliberate, and entirely defensive. Humans had not sought conflict. They had sought recognition of their sovereignty. This clarity began to shift perceptions. The Council, which had once been rigid and unquestioned in its authority, now realized that they had underestimated the potential of a single species when it united for a common purpose. Every planet, every fleet, every diplomat had to reconsider what it meant to face humanity, not with hostility but with awareness. For the humans, this was not about revenge or proving superiority. It was about showing that their patience, their work, and their commitment to unity had a value the galaxy could no longer ignore. And it worked. Diplomatic missions began to reach out to Earth, not with demands but with respect. Envoys traveled cautiously, aware that they were now dealing with a world that could defend itself against any threat. Former critics became cautious allies, seeking to understand the humans' philosophy, technology, and capabilities. At the same time, trade and communication opened in ways never seen before. Humans offered insight into their technology and shared knowledge in measured amounts, carefully balancing cooperation with self-protection. Their approach was deliberate, emphasizing respect, patience, and the long-term benefits of peaceful collaboration. And slowly, the galaxy began to change. The revelation of Earth's fleet and their calm, deliberate message inspired other worlds to reconsider their own paths. Smaller civilizations, which had often relied on alliances with larger empires for survival, began to explore the value of self-reliance, unity, and careful planning. Leaders who had once believed power came only from aggression now saw that strength could come from intelligence, preparation, and restraint. Humans, for their part, remained focused on their planet and their people. They continued to advance technology, improve sustainability, and deepen their understanding of space and the universe. The fleet, now a permanent guardian of the solar system, served not only as protection but as a symbol of what humanity could accomplish when united. And the galaxy watched. Across the stars, alien species began to speak differently of Earth. The words once filled with mockery or doubt were replaced by awe, respect, and sometimes fear, not of destruction, but of capability. Humanity had shown that it could act in its own interest without violating the peace of others. That simple principle, executed with patience and precision, had changed the perception of an entire civilization. For the first time in history, humans felt fully recognized, not as newcomers, not as small players, not as emotional beings prone to mistakes, but as equals among the stars. The council itself underwent changes. Meetings began to include discussions about fair treatment of independent worlds. Policies that had once relied on fear were reconsidered. And in the quiet corners of the chamber, leaders admitted to themselves that humanity had provided a lesson the galaxy would never forget. True strength is not in dominance or intimidation, but in preparation, unity, and clear purpose. Back on Earth, as the sun rose over oceans and cities, people felt a sense of calm pride. They had acted not with aggression, not with haste, and not with arrogance. They had acted with patience, intelligence, and careful planning. And the galaxy had responded, not with war but with recognition. The fleet continued to patrol in orbit, a silent but powerful reminder of what humanity had achieved. It was more than a military force. It was a symbol of unity, resilience, and the enduring will of a species that had refused to be underestimated. For children looking up at the stars, for families gathering to watch the night sky, for scientists and engineers who had devoted their lives to this purpose, it was clear. Humanity had arrived not as conquerors but as equals. The galaxy had been forced to rethink its assumptions, its judgments, and its approach to other civilizations. And that was exactly the point. From that moment forward, Earth was no longer a quiet observer in the Galactic Council of Worlds. It had spoken. It had acted. And it had shown the universe that silence, when combined with purpose, could be louder and stronger than any words or weapons. The galaxy had learned its lesson. The humans had always been capable, and now finally the universe knew it too. The story of the 1,000 ships, the patient silence, and the deliberate preparation became a legend, not of war, but of wisdom. It was a story that would be remembered for centuries, a reminder that strength lies in unity, patience, and purpose. For the humans, it was not about glory or recognition. It was about survival, freedom, and proving that even a single planet, when united, could stand proudly among the stars. And the galaxy had finally acknowledged that truth. Earth had arrived, not with violence, but with vision. And the universe would never forget it.